All right, welcome everyone. We're excited to have a great conversation today with one of my mentors and someone that I deeply respect in our industry and profession here. Again, welcome to another episode of Digital Health News. We have Mr. Jeff Buddha joining us today. Thank you, Buddha, for joining us. I truly appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me, Seppi.
My pleasure. As I mentioned to you in our planning, I was kind of thinking through what our conversation was, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's some things that I don't know about your background and about your journey, and I'm really excited to hear about it. As I mentioned, I've known you, and you're very active with our ecosystem and our community here, and would love to hear a lot more about your journey and your advice about others that are at some part of their journey in this profession. But before we get started, I wanted to ask you to maybe uh, introduce who Mr. Jeff Buddha is before we get started.
Sure. So, yes, I'm Jeff Buddha. I am Vice President of Operations and CIO at Atrium Health Floyd. I have been with Atrium Health Floyd for 13 years. For the first about 10 of those, we were an independent health system. About 3 years ago or so, 4 years ago, we were acquired by Atrium, and then Atrium and Advocate combined. So we've become part of a much, much larger organization. And along the way, in addition to the IT responsibilities, as I said, I picked up some operations responsibilities. So a good number of our more administrative and support services areas roll up to me in addition to IT.
And that obviously speaks volume of you, Buddha, and your leadership style. As organizations grow, it's not what you always hear that individuals uh, acquire more responsibilities. However, you have. So again, that speaks volumes of who you are and what and how you do things. Um, so speaking of that, can you share a little bit about your leadership journey of the last, X amount of years and kind of what key experiences shaped your leadership style?
Sure. Well, to your point, it has been a journey, and I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. Hopefully, I've learned from those. I would tell you over the last several years, I've really been focusing more on building a solid team, making sure that people are in the right roles, that they have the skills and the education that they need to do their jobs effectively, and that we're continuing to invest in education and skills development along the way because technology, as you know, is not stagnant by any stretch of the imagination, and neither are the organizations that we work for. They're not standing still, they're moving forward in many, many ways. And so I've worked on really trying to make sure that we have a solid team, as I said, people are in the right roles, and that people are enjoying the roles that they have. I will tell you, along the way, and particularly over the last 6 or 7 years, um, part of what I've been focusing on is if people aren't happy in their roles, what can we change to help them along their way? And in some cases, it may be that they're interested in looking for a new or different opportunity, sometimes within the same organization, sometimes outside. But I see my role as a leader is to help them achieve their goals, whatever they may be. And sometimes it's just not right for them to stay where they are. So I've had some great experiences over the last few years, just helping people kind of find their next landing spot. And not only did I find it rewarding at the time, I have continued to get positive feedback from those individuals. We've kept in touch through the years. And in fact, last week, I received a note from somebody who I helped find a new role in our larger organization 1 year ago. He sent me a note on the anniversary of him accepting that position,
Mhm.
just thanking for my involvement in helping him and sponsoring him to get that position. And I thought, wow, what a great! It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the definition of workforce development in the making, in action. And I love that. Like you said happy. You
Mhm.
care about the team members enjoying what they do. And some things we're all so busy, we often don't talk about.
Mhm.
But that's really amazing that you kind of take um, attention to that, so that there is those conversations. Often we find ourselves, they don't want to have those conversations, especially with their CIO, or don't have those type of relationships. So you've already kind of going in this direction, and this already illustrates your leadership style. But to continue on that, how do you personally define effective leadership, especially in a healthcare IT um, kind of environment? Like I said, you've touched on your focus on workforce development and also your team's growth and satisfaction.
Mhm. Well, leadership in and of itself, I think, is sort of multifaceted. I think as the leader of the IT organization, we need to keep ourselves aligned with the organizational strategy and the direction that the organization is moving in. And sometimes that brings about change. I've really tried hard as I see change on the horizon to let people know that it's coming. And as much as I can anticipate what to expect out of that, sometimes people like that, sometimes people don't, but nobody really likes surprises. And so I've tried to keep people informed about what's coming down the pike to the extent possible. I think leadership also is, as I alluded to earlier, making sure that the team is high performing and remains high performing. We have to be adaptable. We have to be able to pivot and adopt that change. We have to be resilient. Let's face it, IT is hard, and often a lot of struggles just in making the technology work, keeping it up and going. As I mentioned too, I like people to enjoy what they do. It's called work for a reason. It is work,
Yeah.
but if people are enjoying what they're doing and they feel like they're contributing, it makes it a bit more enjoyable. We all spend a lot of time with each other at work. I try to be pretty personable, pretty approachable along the way, receptive to feedback.
Mhm.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I do with my team to this day is we have a monthly department meeting. I
Mhm.
give them the opportunity to submit questions anonymously so they don't have to self identify.
Okay.
And they can ask me anything that they want. And it could be, and many times I've gotten some very, very difficult questions, ones that I would have preferred not to answer. But
Right.
my commitment to them has been and remains that I will give them an honest answer.
Hmm.
I'm not going to guarantee that they're going to like my answer, but I'm going to give them an honest answer. And if it's something that I can't talk about because it's strategically sensitive, then I'll just let them know I can't discuss it at this time, but there will be more information coming. That has done wonders for a team that I think historically, going back many, many years, was afraid to speak up. I mean, we have to have these dialogues. People get frustrated if they don't have the opportunity to voice their opinions, provide input, even if that input isn't necessarily followed. People have had the opportunity to voice their opinions and their concerns, and I think that, going back to your question, is also a part of leadership.
Yeah.
Is sometimes you have to make the hard decisions, right? Not everybody is going to like everything that you do, but it's done with good intent. It's done in a manner that is intended to keep the IT organization aligned with the business goals and objectives, and expectations for our performance. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think again, key points that I'm picking up on: open communication,
yeah.
expectation setting. And even if you cannot maybe give all the details, you putting yourself in a scenario where you acknowledge
Hmm.
that whatever might be going on, that you acknowledge, yes, this is impactful to you, and I'm aware of that, and I'll get, I'll tell you as soon as I know more or as soon as I can. And my favorite word for 2025 has been pivot. And
Mm.
I feel like we all have to be capable and willing to pivot. No matter planning or conversation or communication, I think that more than ever is going on, not just in HIT, but healthcare as a whole, whether it's associated with tools and technology or just the environment we're in. So I really, really appreciated that comment. Um, you've kind of, again, you're touching on all this, but you said during your, whether it's department meetings, town halls, or whatever interactions you have with your team, you're leaving yourself open, um,
Mhm.
exposed to them asking you and coming to you about anything. Um, so obviously that represents your leadership style and your mentality towards your team. So share a little bit more, build upon the concept of that uncertainty when they want more, and there's sometimes you don't even know. Things
Right.
are still happening, decisions still haven't been accomplished, or you're waiting on your leaders. So, what kind of strategies do you use um, to kind of engage your team during those um, kind of shaky periods?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to one thing first, and
Mhm,
then I'll get to that question directly. And
mhm,
and that is, I mentioned that I have this forum where people can ask me questions anonymously. I don't think I would have necessarily had the courage to do that earlier in my career. It took a lot of time, I think, to not only build up that confidence in myself, but realize how important that is to the team. And that comes into play in the answer to the question that you just asked in the periods of uncertainty. And we've gone through a fair amount of uncertainty in our organization over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. So it was approximately 5 years ago that we announced our intent to join with Atrium Health. And of course, everybody on my team immediately wondered, am I going to have a job? What is that job going to be? I didn't have answers to any of those questions. And that really was when I kind of started this forum in our monthly meetings. Ask me any question you like. Tell me what's on your mind. I'm going to give you a straightforward answer. And if I don't have the answer, I'm going to seek to find it and provide an update in our next meeting. I think it was that level of dialogue and that level of transparency that really helped us navigate that change successfully. I think I had maybe one person on the team leave the organization because of the uncertainty. Everybody else weathered the storm and has found a happy landing in this new larger organization. In some cases, their roles changed, and we did everything we could to find an opportunity that was aligned with their interests and skills development. We actually had some people that were on an application support team that pivoted into cybersecurity, and various people kind of changed their roles with the organizational commitment to get some additional education. So it's almost what I would call a co-investment in people's careers, right? So from my standpoint, delivering that transparency, delivering a certain amount of vulnerability. And in many cases, I told them, look, I'm just as uncertain about what my future is in this organization as the rest of you are. I also have obligations, mortgage, family, all the things that everybody else does. And we're going to weather this storm together, and we're going to come out the other side, and we're going to be better for it. So it's that level of transparency, but then also them um, having the courage to speak up, to let us know what's on their mind, and help us as leaders mold a future that includes everybody to the extent we possibly can. Certainly, there are things we're not going to be able to control, but um, really just developing that relationship and the partnership with the team through that change and keeping that communication going. We did it again fairly recently with another organization that joined ours. So we were just recently in kind of an acquisition mode,
mhm,
and same approach with that organization. We pretty much held on to everybody. We're still in the process of mapping out where their roles are going to be, but I think
mhm,
for the most part, everybody has been pretty satisfied, and I think that as I look back on the conversations I had, I don't think anybody could go back and say, gee, he lied to us, or it's not exactly like he said, or anything along those lines. It's just, delivering the truth. And sometimes people don't want to hear it, and they may self-select out. But
Mhm.
I've found, at least in the last couple, that it's rare.
And you're setting such a great example for leaders on your team and maybe anyone that is experiencing this with you. They're able to kind of see this in action. And, I personally love when I can rub elbows with any of my leaders, right? Because behind the scenes in my mind, I'm kind of assessing like how they're handling themselves, the interactions, the responses, their body language, and kind of that's part of learning, right? Also, even if you're not doing it, is kind of watching how the others do it. And everything you just shared, I dare say, again, I'm going to oversimplify it, is very foundational. It sounds simple. It sounds like, well, yeah, we should all do that, but it is very difficult, like you said, because the behavioral components of what we're doing. There's so many personalities, so many variety of backgrounds and perspectives, and again, you allow yourself to be that. And I'm not using the word target in a negative way, but you're allowing yourself to be that target of that inquiry and conversation, which really helps. I'm sure I can imagine also your direct reports to continue to kind of lead and manage their teams.
Mhm.
Um, so, speaking of the individuals that might be on your leadership team,
Mhm.
I'm sure they have a variety of different interests and backgrounds. How do you, you touched on, you really at all levels look at where people are, whether they're happy, and obviously if they come to you, then you have even more engagement. But for your leadership team that probably also want to look at ways to advance in their careers as emerging leaders, what strategies do you practice or do you offer your team for them to continue to grow? And growth is not always just title, but
Mhm.
in different ways.
Sure. Well, as you know, just because of our work together, I do promote our team, our leadership team's
Mhm,
engagement in, um, local, regional, professional associations, other kind of educational forums and things like that, so that they have the opportunity to continue to grow their skills, meet with leaders from different organizations, because everybody has a little bit different leadership style, and just kind of learn from peers. So kind of externally facing, just encourage that level of engagement. And then, of course, what comes along with that is all of the networking. You get to meet lots of people, and you never really know where your next job may come from. Most of mine, as I've gone through my career, have been through networking opportunities. Very few have ever come from job boards or postings or anything along those lines. It's really become an opportunity from somebody that I knew. So I think that networking component is important. Internally, as I look internally, um, I've promoted the idea of personal development plans where people, and we have an intentional conversation about what are your goals and objectives, what kind of skills do you want to learn, what kind of roles do you want to have, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years, kind of typical interview question. um, and as I learn from them about what their aspirations are, um, to the extent I can present them with some opportunities to grow in that direction and help maybe mentor them through that, or just give them that experience. And as I said earlier, sometimes that's even outside of our department, really to provide those opportunities for those folks. Um, that's their aspirations, and that's what makes them tick, and that's what makes them happy. And I think that that tends to build a certain amount of loyalty and trust
Yes.
between the leaders and the team,
Yes.
and that's
Mhm.
crucially important.
Absolutely, you're right. That loyalty, trust, and a lot of. I was talking to a student earlier today. She had to do like an interview to finish up her degree, and she was like, "What's your leadership style, and how do you do this?" My leadership style really started, and how I was trained was through the military, through ROTC and all that. But still, a lot of that is not just barking orders or demanding. It's by influencing and by caring
Mhm.
and by investing, so that when something does blow up and or something goes south, they are there because they want to be there. They want to help resolve it, help to support you, help to, and none of that can really be demanded. You can tell what's, in a team where it's the heart is in it.
Right.
Um, um, so share a little bit about you. You mentioned earlier, having those having that vulnerability with your department and having those type of conversations. It's not something you kind of just did overnight. It takes some experience and shows how seasoned of a leader you are. But what is a leadership challenge that you have faced throughout the years that have taught you lessons like that, that has
Oh my word.
influenced? Yeah. We only have a little bit of time, Buddha. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. Well, since we only have a little bit of time, I'll try and keep it short. I've really tried to learn from my mistakes, and as I mentioned earlier, I've made plenty of them. I'll go back to my first management position,
Mhm.
and I thought I had a good concept of what a manager was, and it was, um, I would say I must have been miserable to work for back then, because it really was. I feel like I was probably very demanding. I was not particularly empathetic. I was all about getting the work done. And I had just kind of made a transition from being more of like an individual contributor, and had gained a good reputation and got promoted into a management position. And it was more about, so my mindset was more about what I could do. And it took me a while to realize that my performance was really evaluated based on what my team could do. And it was about how do you bring out the best in each contributor on that team. And I mean that just taught a host of lessons, because you have to be empathetic, you have to listen, you have to admit that you don't have all of the answers, but seek to find them, whether it's together or from your leadership. um, Holy cow. I could probably go on and on about that. That was probably one of the early lessons. I think as I have matured through my management career, it's about developing those relationships and learning the importance of trust. It's one thing to kind of show up and pretend like you have the relationships. It's another to actually have them. People can tell the difference,
Yeah,
and it took a while to kind of learn that. So, and you do that, I think, again um, through being vulnerable from time to time,
yeah,
and um, just figuring it out,
yeah,
admitting you don't have all of the answers.
yeah. Yeah, and nor are we supposed to. I think that's truly the definition of the team, like you said, identifying everyone's strengths and then
Hmm.
helping each other pivot to fill in the gaps that we might have as an individual, but not as a team.
Yeah.
Um, it's just amazing. A lot of the things you've identified, you're talking about is really there's foundation build technologically, right? We
Hmm.
talk about having strong foundation in our technology conversations and then building upon it. You're talking about now having that strong foundation at a human level,
Hmm.
at a just yeah, human level, so that we can all build upon that together. And that same concept would work if, like you said, whether at Georgia Hymns or whether you're like I'm personally speaking, whether I was in scouting. When you have that perspective that you just shared, and that uh, respect, that courtesy, that approach, you're building a strong behavioral relationship, and that foundation that helps anyone build upon it to be able to do great things.
Hmm.
Just because you might get X project approved and it brings a lot of tools, it doesn't mean that um, it will pick up or present itself solutions when you do not have a strong team already.
Right. Yeah. I would probably add a couple learnings along the way. I'll just throw these out here
Please.
briefly. One is don't react, but especially don't overreact.
Uh,
Um, you know, your team is going to be presented with some challenges that they may not fare very well, and outcomes are not what you expected. It took me a while through my career to finally realize, look, I can't react negatively to that. It's not like people didn't try. Maybe they didn't have the skills. Maybe they didn't ask for help. Maybe they didn't really clearly understand the objective, and that's on me. I don't really know, but don't overreact. It's really more of a coaching approach. Um, I think that we need to take.
yeah, thank you for that. That's
Yeah,
yeah, I'm taking that in as well. Um, and it's not but I literally just lost my train of thought because when you said don't overreact, I think I was really taking that in because you're right. When things happen, you absorb it. Um, you react because that's human. But here's the other thing. Don't you agree that with whatever happens, and no matter how much planning or thought we put into something, things will still go wrong? Whether it's
yeah,
something we do or whether it's technology. But don't don't you agree that it's what we do at that point with what happens and how we take it from there?
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I've seen it time and again. And I think that's all, to me, it kind of goes back to that concept of trust. So when stuff like that happens, you're absolutely right. It's how you and the team uh, sort of ingest that and adapt to the changing circumstance. And the only way, oh, not the only way, but I think the best way to do that is when you've got a trusting relationship, right? You can confess to one another, oh, geez, I really don't like this, or I didn't expect that. All right, we're past that. How are we going to deal with it?
Yeah,
I think it helps you move through that
yeah,
solutioning a little bit better.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, you're right. So, for those listening, Buddha, and they really want to take all of this you said, consume it, and really work on their strategies on leadership roles and kind of progressing in their career, what advice would you give them about preparing themselves and staying authentic along the way?
Yeah, um, great question, and probably a lot to unpack there. Um, I've made mention a couple times. I've made lots of mistakes. I think one of the things that aspiring leaders need to do is be honest with yourself about when you've made a mistake and learn from it. Don't double down. Uh, I would tell you that's a mistake I made earlier on in my career, where I'd made a mistake and then I doubled down, and it just became a really bigger mistake. Be honest with yourself, admit that mistake, admit the flaw, figure out what you need to do to correct it, and strive not to make that mistake again. Um, we talked a little bit about leadership being a journey. I think there's a certain amount of self-reflection that you need to do throughout your leadership journey, and again, just being honest with yourself. There were times in my journey where I felt like I need to be present more. I need to know my teams at a more personal level, and I would try and force it. And then I realized I'm trying to force it. It's not natural. Everybody knows it. Um, and just realizing, okay, I just need to be myself. I need to ask honest questions. I need to be prepared for whatever answer comes, even if I don't like it. Um, and really develop the relationships a bit more on a personal level in that way. Um, I think, again, recognizing that your performance is based upon what your team does and your team's performance, not on what you can individually do. Um, and then I think the last thing I would add is coach your team. Help them to understand, what how you think, but what the objectives are, how you think, what the expectations are, and then help coach them along. Check in with them, see how they're doing. Ask them if they need some help in any way. One of the things I've shared with many of my team through the years is that I used to feel like asking for help was a sign of weakness until I realized that it was actually a sign of strength, and encourage them to ask for help when they need it, because they've got a whole bunch of people around them that are more than willing to help, may have more expertise in a particular area, or may just offer another way to think through how to solve a given problem. And so having those conversations, I think, is important.
And would you say that consistency brings a lot of value to everything you said as well? It's not doing maybe like you said, and being authentic is also having some consistency in whatever it is that's part of who you are, that you're doing with your team, not in spurts, not only when it's evaluation time, right?
Yeah,
Or it's having some level of whatever matches who you are as a person.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I do completely agree. I think one of the things that people have said about me and have shared with me, so I'm not trying to sort of toot my own horn here,
Hmm.
is that I'm very even keel.
You are.
You know, again, I don't I
Yeah.
don't react a lot.
Yeah.
I don't show a lot of
Yeah.
emotion, and I think that again also feeds into the notion of trust.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say you don't show emotion. For example, the Falcons, when we were losing, remember our old coach, Dan Quinn? I wanted to go through the TV and choke him because he wouldn't show any emotions while we were losing, right? It would get me so angry.
Hmm. Right.
And with my experience with you, you are very, um, you know, what do you call, even kill, but I very much know and can feel where your areas of passion are and what you're
Hmm.
thinking, and where you stand with things. And, so it's not that, again, in my interactions with you, it's like, whether you agree, disagree, or whatever, you put it out there, and I always know you will do something with it. And,
Hmm.
whatever your stance is on it or whatever your perspective is, it's gonna something will be done with it, and you will drive it, in some direction that you feel strongly about. So,
Hmm. No, that's fair.
um, I mean, I'm kind of coming to a close here. Is there anything else that you kind of want to touch on that you believe, as our peers and other professionals, emerging leaders that might be watching this, that you might want to give advice on from a both, not just leadership. Not everyone wants to be per se in the title of a manager, director, whatever, but they do want to progress. They want to have opportunities. For example, one thing that comes to mind is not every CIO or leader um, has a lot of the approaches you touched on. What if they find themselves in a situation where that is not offered to them? Those type of inquiries or questions, and this is kind of off the cuff, Buddha, but would you
Hmm.
have any advice on how they could maybe open up those conversations in an environment maybe it's that's not existing or that's not there right now?
Yeah. I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. And you have to really sort of think through your approach, right? So
Mhm,
understand a little bit who your leader is and what motivates them in sort of planning your approach to that conversation.
mhm,
I think you do yourself a disservice if you don't have the conversation with your leader. If you
mhm,
don't let them know what you're interested in, you don't give them the opportunity to help you along. And maybe they would and maybe they wouldn't, but until you have the conversation, you probably won't know. And if the opportunities that you're looking for aren't presented, that also probably tells you about a lot about the leader or the organization that you're working with, and that it might be time to find a new opportunity. And that's unfortunate, but it happens. Not everybody in a management position or leadership position is a great manager or leader. I mentioned a few times I've made several mistakes. I like to think that I've learned from those through the years, but um, particularly at the first supervisory or management levels, those people are still sort of navigating, how do I do this new role, and they're going to make mistakes. But again, I think having that courage, understanding the leader and how to approach that conversation
mhm.
um, is important. I learned, you know, one of the things that I picked up through my MBA courses is how to provide feedback, and um, it really needs to be, I think, more of a matter of fact conversation. It's not condescending, it's not scolding, but it's also not fake. Where, oh, you did a great job on these things, but bleh. You build them up before you knock them down. It's really a discussion of the facts. And I think going back to your question about how do you have that conversation about your aspirations with your leader, um, you just, I think, need to approach it in a similar way. Look, I'm interested in these types of things, and growing these types of skills or moving into this type of position. Are there any opportunities for me to do that, over the coming 6 to 12 months? Or
Mhm.
is there anything I need to do from your perspective to prepare me to take those things on?
Yeah, yeah, thank you too. So stepping back, one thing you said about when a leader is talking to their team member about opportunities that they're seeing, and one thing I wanted to add was I think it's also important to have those conversations real time,
Hmm.
not something you just write and put in a file and then talk about it. Often when I've seen like just during the annual review or something, it's really important to have those conversations real time so that the examples and conversation make sense for the person receiving that feedback.
Hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to call out again is if someone is trying to self-advocate, I guess is the words I would use, and trying to initiate conversation with their leaders or with someone about what they want. What I also heard you say is come with some specifics. Do your homework,
Hmm.
come with some specifics of what you're looking for and not where I want to be, something that might not truly make sense. Like I want to do this tomorrow. No. How do you think you could potentially have incremental, training or a pathway to something? I think if you come with a straw model approach or plan or concept to whoever you're talking to, then they'll have a better idea of where your mindset is, and they could then coach you on what might be realistic in the environment you're in.
Hmm.
Does that do
Yep.
you agree? I don't know. Okay.
I would agree with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Buddha, I really appreciate everything. I truly, like I said, I respect you so much and appreciate um, your guidance throughout the years personally. And I've known again, I know this is who you are. You do it for anyone that has worked with you and whether in your the roles you've held in professional organizations or in your full-time job, and I'm sure this is just who you are. As we close, and for our listeners, I wanted to kind of turn and ask, and as we spoke a pivot, but pivot to a different kind of question. What's kind of in what's next for Buddha? And that could be personal or professional, but what are some of the things that's on top of mind and a current goal of yours?
Yeah. Well, I'll probably focus more on the work aspect at this point.
Okay.
It's so we have some things coming from an IT perspective. We have some things coming around care delivery models that we're working on, and we'll be excited to kind of bring to our market when they're a little bit more fully developed. But we've got some work going on in the background, and I think it's exciting work now. I think it'll be
Yeah.
exciting when we're in a position to deliver upon that. There are several other things, as I mentioned. I have some non-IT responsibilities. We've got some pretty significant construction and renovation projects going on that I'm pretty heavily involved with. So, and those are going to be, as you know, I mean, those are 6 to 12 month
Right.
initiatives. So I'm going to be plenty busy over the coming year. But those are some of the main ones.
Well, congratulations to that, and I know your team will be absolutely successful and be able to continue to grow holistically. And again, truly appreciate your time and everything you do in our industry and in our ecosystem. So, thank you for joining us, and thank you for everyone that's listening.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
All right, JP, let us know when it's all uploaded. JP, are you there? I don't want to hang up until I get confirmation that it was uploaded.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, JP. JP.
Looks like he's back, Seppi. Can't hear you.
JP, can you hear me? While we're waiting, was my audio okay, Buddha?
Yeah, you froze just briefly a couple of times, but otherwise it was just fine.
Seppi, you're sending it to me, not JP. Seppi, the message you are sending it to me.
Okay, give me a minute.
You got to save JP's number and then you need to text. problem.
Sorry, Buddha.
No, that's all right.
No worries.
Hello. एक मिनट चालू करूंगा. Hello.
Hello.
Are you guys done?
Yes, we are done. If you don't mind stopping it and
Can I end
uploading it,
stream now?
we're done.
Okay.